I wanted to read you a quote. It's a quote that I love. It's by Vladimir Lenin. I don't think he gets quoted a lot here at the White House, but I'm going to go for it. There are decades where nothing happens and weeks where everything happens. You are living through an extraordinary time as president. It feels like the world is turning on its axis every 36 hours. Are there times when you wake up in the morning and think, I wish it was a little bit duller right now? I wish things would just settle down.
Well, yes and no. Look, yes, when I had that cranial aneurysm, the doc was trying to explain to me whether it was congenital or environmental. And I said, Doc, I don't care, just fix it.
Yeah. This is back in, is this 88?
This is 88. And he looked at me and said, you know what your problem is, Senator? And I said, no, Doc. Well, he said, you're a congenital optimist. Well, seriously, that was a quote. Uh-huh. Here's the deal, though. One of the things that I've never been more optimistic about America's chances in my whole life. I wasn't going to run again because I just lost my son. He should be sitting being interviewed, not me. Mm-hmm. He was the Attorney General, Bronze Star winner, major in the U.S. Army. Anyway.
Yeah.
When I wasn't going to run because I was going to write a book on an inflection point in American history, I think we're at one of those points that every 7 or 8 generations occurs.
Yeah.
Where not because of any one leader, but the world is changing. Everything's in motion. And what we do in the last couple of years, the next 3 or 4 years, is going to determine the course of the country and the world for the next 5 or 6 decades. I believe that with every fiber of my being.
Yeah.
If we prevent Ukraine from collapsing, if we continue, I've worked like hell, not just me, to hold NATO together tightly. It's never been this tight. Expand it. We have an opportunity to change the dynamic in Europe for generations.
Yeah.
My mother, God love her, I remember going to identify my family. The accident said, Joey, out of everything terrible, something good will happen if you look hard enough for it. I thought it was the cruelest thing she ever said to me. Yeah. But look what's going on in the Middle East now.
Yeah.
You know, I was able to get a resolution passed through the G20, the 20 leaders of the 20 largest nations, to build a railroad from Riyadh all the way through into Saudi Arabia, Jordan, up through Israel, all the way up into Europe. Because there's much more reason for them to be together than to be apart.
I'm not a journalist, so I'm allowed to give my opinion. And I, as again, amateur historian, I think it's absolutely crucial that Ukraine prevail. And it's something that I'm very passionate about. I get confused, as you know, the Washington you came to in the 1973, Republicans were always tough on foreign policy, tough on Russia. And now MAGA Republicans, they've kind of flipped the script and they're saying, well, we can let Ukraine go. It's not really in our interest. And I don't understand it. It's confusing to me.
Say, the other guy says, if we can work with Putin, he's smart.
The other guy, I like that he's the other guy. He's like Voldemort now. His name shall not be mentioned.
Well, good point.
Yeah.
I plead guilty.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, just if nothing but global warming is changing the world.
Yeah.
Ice caps are melting, that's true. But guess what brings that along with? Now you got China and Russia and the North Pole trying to circumvent the globe, change the dynamic in the region. I mean, the things that are happening, for example, the idea that we're having to rebuild infrastructure, but some countries don't have the capacity to do it. Mm-hmm. I've been met now twice. I've had the leaders of the Pacific nations come and be with me here because they're worried about going underwater and not making it. Yeah. Just go down the list. But I think, maybe because I'm that congenital optimist, when I told my staff a couple years ago I was going to bring South Korea and Japan together, they looked at me like, now, look, I know a fair amount about foreign policy. I have more experience than any president's ever had. Doesn't mean I'm good or bad. Just I know these, heads of state. It's a small world. It's getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
For example, in the China's a competitor, but I have a relationship with Xi Jinping. I've spent more time with him than any world leader ever has. Just because when I was vice president, Barack wanted me to get to know him because it wasn't appropriate for a president to spend time with him but we knew he was going to be the president. He's a very tough, smart guy, but he's got enormous problems. And so, for example, when I put together the Quad, India, Japan, Australia, and the United States, he said, you're trying to surround me. I'm not trying to surround you. I said, we're just not going to let you change the dynamic of world rules. So whether it's international airspace or whether it's sea space. They said, well, I didn't write them. I said, well, that's what they are. We're not going to change them. So many parts are moving that there's an opportunity to realign the world in a way that is less likely to result in war, less likely to result in human suffering. Now, I know people look at me and say, well, you're just too optimistic. I think it takes some real planning. And there's ways to step up and lead. And look, one of the things is, again, I want to make it clear, it's not because Joe Biden's president. It's the moment. Madeleine Albright said, America is the essential nation. Conan, that's not a joke. Who leads the world if the United States doesn't? Who? No one else can. And we have an obligation and an enormous opportunity to leave our kids and our grandkids a better world.
Well, I like that you describe yourself as an optimist, congenital optimist. I would say I always tell people I'm a 52% optimist, meaning there's a good, healthy dose of me that is very worried and very concerned, but I always lean towards optimism. It's the more challenging standpoint to take.
Well, don't get me wrong. I have written about, and I think I know pretty intimately the downside.
Yeah.
But look, we got to remember, we're the United States of America, for God's sake. Nothing is beyond our capacity when we work together. I mean, it really isn't. Think if we're the only nation in the world, in my view, as a student of history, that has come out of every crisis stronger than we went in.
I did want to end on, I've been doing this for a long time, and so it was a big honor when I got the call that the president of the United States was going to speak to me in the White House.
Come on.
And it's an honor, and I'm rooting for you. And as the Irish say, God bless you. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Do you guys have a chance to come over and see the Oval?
I'd love to see the Oval.
Come on, let's go do it.
All right, let's do it.